everything that happens in TerraPilot really happens from our measurement tab. All of our measurements come from really three core categories. We have point, which you can hit P on your keyboard to load, line, which is L, or polygon, which is O. So we're going to talk about point today, and point is a pretty useful feature, even if it's the most basic and the most fundamental pointer that you have in TerraPilot is actually your mouse pointer. You don't have to load anything. You don't have to key in anything. You just move your mouse. So I'll go ahead and highlight the lower right corner of the screen with an arrow and point out that as I move my mouse here, I can see the elevation change, right? So here it is on one side, and then there it is over there, and I can move this mouse pointer. And so where I've had a customer ask, well, what's the elevation at this inlet cover, or what's the elevation of this storm drain? All you have to do is put your mouse on top of that storm drain, and you're going to be able to see in the bottom right corner what that elevation is. And that is fantastic for quick spot checks where we just need to take a quick look, see what it is. We don't need to save it. We don't need to memorialize it. We just need to go take a look and check. Okay. So, aside from those, if we want to save it, we want to memorialize it, or we want to track it, we can use some different pieces. Now, you have some pre built points here: elevation, hazard, and annotation. And if you don't remember the training, I know you can come in here and you can click this little info button and it'll tell you what this is, right? So there's what a hazard does. Here's what an annotation is, right? So let's start with elevation. Elevation is a type of point that tracks elevation changes over the history of the data sets. Now we have 6 data sets in this project. And so what we're looking at is based on where I place that point, what has the elevation looked like over the history of our project? Well, 41.41, 41.49, 41.52. And then we have it a bit of a drop here. Not much because we have to look at our scale, right? We're only looking at a 1-foot scale here. So this elevation has held pretty steady. Let's take a different one and let's pick a point over here and let's see if that elevation change is any different. Same thing, we're dealing with 40 to 42. So always look at your scale. We can see some, oh, this looks like an extreme drop. Yeah, well, it's extreme from 41.14 to 40.75. Very minimal, but again, it's that tracking and that history of what's happened at that point. Now, if this is something that we want to preserve, we can change the name up here under elevation 2. We can say spot check, for example. And we can put in some descriptions or notes or whatever we'd like, and then we can hit save. And if we hit save, then that appears in our measure tab as a elevation point now that we can go back to. Others can look at, others can check out. And then that is specific to this data set. So if we look at the survey here, and it says July 21st, this point is specific to this survey. So we're in the measurement tab, we speed spot check, and it's only available. If we were to switch to the July 7th data set, we wouldn't see spot check. Well, what if we want to see that spot check across the board? Probably with the elevation point, it's not the best example. We'll go ahead and look at that with a different one, but I'll show you how to do it in nonetheless. What we do is we promote this to site, right? So we take the little 3 dots here under actions, and we say promote it to site. And what that does is that makes that elevation available in every data set we have. And in fact, you'll kind of notice a little bit of a difference here. Let me bring out measurements again. You see there's a small globe here, and it says site level, site level, site level. That's because the design surface, the slope measurement, and the stockpile area are all measurements that we made on different data sets, but we promoted to the site level. So that's how you can tell at a quick glance whether or not this is site level or not. And if we wanted to, we could go ahead and take the action and demote it from the site and put it back into the measurement that it was made in, the survey it was made in. So we want to come back around to our different types of points. And that's our elevation point. We have our spot check. We can go ahead and remove it if we want, but that's how we would save it. And we'll go ahead and delete spot check. So let's look at the next type of point. Next type of point is a hazard. What a hazard does is it still sets a marker like spot check, like the elevation point, but now what we're doing is we're tracking the severity and the likelihood that this hazard poses in overall risk management and risk mitigation. So we can label the hazard again. We can put in notes. We can adjust the severity, catastrophic, hazardous, major, or minor, as well as the likelihood. That's probable, remote, or extremely improbable. And these, of course, can be edited. So, for example, someone could set an area, mark it as a hazard. Another person can come along, update the notes right here in where it says type text, and adjust the severity. So we would go ahead and mark that hazard, and we could again save it. Now, you'll notice that one thing that is on all of our measurements that we have is a style tab. So if we wanted to change the style from some of the defaults, so for example, the default is yellow, and it has an icon that looks like this marker here, and we wanted to maybe change the marker to the hazard symbol, and we wanted to make this hazard red, or we wanted to add a custom color or a custom symbol, we could do that. We can also do what's called a buffer. So if I'm looking at an area that is of concern as opposed to a point, I can mark it with a point, but add this buffer. And you'll see what this buffer does is allows us to adjust that buffer area and where that point is, and then how to fill that in. So now, instead of calling out a very specific point location, we can call out that area using that buffer feature. This is available on pretty much everything we put in there. So you're always going to have some element of style that you can adjust for these points. So they don't have to be all out of the box. This marker right here with in yellow and just a boring point like that. You can make it however you would like. So that was hazard. The third type of point that comes out of the box here is annotation. And annotation, by default, doesn't set a point. It just really kind of sets a note, if you will. Okay. And so what we do is we have 255 characters where we can type in whatever we would like here. Okay. This area should be checked for whatever is bad. We're just making up stuff now. Okay. And it will put that in there. Again, I can change the style. I can add a buffer. I can change the color. I can add an icon if I want. If I want to put a marker down there, I can add an icon, put a marker down. I can change this to blue. I can make this red. I can do whatever I want. But annotations are really about putting notes on there. And again, it's a tool by which you're going to communicate with others about things on this project. And again, if we save that, it's saved. Otherwise, we don't have to save it if we don't want to. The best thing that I like about this is that I can take a point, okay, and I just put down just the default basic point, and I can change it to an annotation. And after its annotation, I can mark it as a hazard, right? So let's think about this a second, right? So we have this, we're going to manage hazard A, okay? Let's take out that P. We're going to mark hazard A. Maybe we have some sort of naming conventions. It's a hazard. We put in our information, and we want them to check this, and we assign a severity, and we assign a likelihood, okay? And we save it, okay? Now we have a hazard. We can even come back over here, and we can change the style, and we can put up the caution, and now it's definitely a hazard because we have a caution flag, okay? And we can go ahead and close that. Later on, we can come back to this measurement, and we can change it from a hazard to an annotation. And now we can change the name, And we could say mitigated hazard. And we know that that's where there was a hazard, but we don't need to track it as a hazard anymore. So we can change what that point is right here anytime. So even if we have something that we're managing and the needs change, we don't have to go back and reset a new point. We can just turn that into a different type of point. And eventually we could just make it a point at the end of the day. And again, our info is here, and we can look at what that is at any time, see what fields are available, and adjust those. So that's one of the beautiful pieces about this platform, is that we have flexibility to adapt as the conditions on the ground change. So that is the more basic tool of the three that we use to do most of our analysis here in TerraPilot, and that is the point. As always, if you have any questions going forward, you can reach us at help at goterrapilot.com, and we'll have that on the screen for you, of course. But it is help at goterrapilot.com, whether it's answering your question or even coming in and putting in some measurements for you and then showing you how to do that and how you can get the data back out of it. With that, thanks for watching.